Today we're checking out the new Sennheiser Momentum Sport, and these buds are packed with features like heart rate and body temperature tracking, a secure fit of course, great sound, and they advertise a semi-open design even though it's just a normal in-ear design. So there's a lot of good to cover, but they do have their issues. So today I'll be comparing them to the old Sennheiser Sport and the new Momentum 4 True Wireless. Now the retail price is $329 US, 529 Australian. Pretty insane price. I was super keen to try these out, but I put them off for a little bit until I found like a 15% off coupon on eBay. Still very expensive, but here we are. Now I'm gonna start here today with what I think are the three most important aspects of a sports earbud. First is of course the fit and how they work with different types of training. Second is a transparency mode, which is very important to be able to hear your surroundings when you're exercising outside, and there's a lot to cover with that. And third is of course a noise cancelling, so you can block out your surroundings when you're training in a gym, for example. So let's start with the fit, and I'm just going to be talking about my experience here. But when I use any of the three included wingtips, I start to get discomfort after about 20 minutes, to the point where it's just unbearable. So I feel pain in my ear where the wing rests, as well as inside my ear canal, outside my ear canal, just pain all over the place. I tried all three sizes of the wings over multiple days to see if my ear would adapt, but I still had the same issue. And I do have larger than average ears, so maybe it's just the shape of my ear canal. I'm honestly not sure, because I've used wings in the past and I usually have no issues. And I've spoken to some fellow reviewers who are also testing these earbuds and they've had no issues with the comfort. So again, keep in mind, this is just my experience. So it's nice that you have the option to just put a cover on the wing and not use a wingtip. So when I do that, the comfort is massively improved. It's still not amazing, but I can actually wear the buds for an entire workout with no pain. And I still get pretty decent security even without the wing, but keep in mind, if you use that wing, the buds really lock in place. They're not gonna budge out at all. So when running, I'm not even having to readjust. During my weight training sessions, I have to readjust the earbuds here and there, but it's still very minimal. It'll only be things like lying down for a bench press or leaning over for a row. The buds might lose seal slightly, where with the wingtip, they lock in place a bit better. So compared to the Momentum 4, they also use a wing, but it's too small for my giant ears. So I get about the same security with those two, obviously more security with the wing on the Momentum Sport. And on the old Sennheiser Sport, I also got some slight discomfort with those wingtips, nowhere near as bad as a Momentum Sport though. And the security I get with the Sport is the same as a Momentum Sport with a wingtip. Now comparing these two earbuds, you can see the Sport is slightly larger, but the ergonomics on the Momentum Sport are interesting. There's like a slight rounding of the bud close to the nozzle, which is what I think might be causing the issue for me. The Momentum 4 is more compact, still not the smallest earbud out there, but just way more comfortable for me. And the actual feel of the Momentum Sport in my ear is quite light, so I get minimal suction, minimal pressure. It's not too deep of a fit. And they advertise it's a semi-open fit, but it's just a normal in-ear fit, regular ear tips, same as the Sport and Momentum 4. When they mention it's a semi-open fit, they're referring to the pressure relief to improve airflow in the earbuds, which will help minimize body-borne noise. So things like heavy breathing and impact you make on the ground, which is very important when running. The Sport also has this, where the Momentum 4 doesn't have this, so when you're running, you're gonna hear more of that body-borne noise. So your footsteps and breathing reverberates into the ear tips, and since that reverberation is a lower frequency, it'll actually take away from the bass in your music, and you just hear it, which is a bit distracting. An issue I have with the Momentum Sport though when running was a slight clicking sound in my left earbud. And I think it's due to the left earbud housing the heart rate sensor. Because even when I'm adjusting the earbud, I hear the same clicking sound. Even when I was driving with the left earbud in, that same clicking sound would happen randomly. And it's honestly quite distracting when running. It would mainly happen if I was making more moderate impact on the ground. But let me know in the comments if you do have a pair of these, if you're having the same issue. You do get peace of mind when it comes to sweat and dust resistance with the IP55 rating on the Momentum Sport. Slightly better than the IP54 rating on the Sport, and the Momentum 4 has no dust resistance. Now another, if not the most important aspect when running is being able to hear your surroundings. So the Momentum Sport have a transparency mode that will use the microphones on the earbuds to let in your surroundings. The Sport doesn't have this. They use two types of ear tips, regular ear tips that block out noise and aware ear tips that let in some noise. And those aware ear tips are kind of a hybrid between regular ear tips and a semi-in-ear bud without an ear tip, like the AirPods for example. So you can hear surroundings well enough with those aware ear tips, but if you're gonna be training in the gym, you're gonna change to those focus ear tips, and it's just not too efficient. Where with the transparency mode, you can just turn this on or off on the earbuds. And the clarity of the transparency is much better. You're also able to adjust the strength of the transparency mode in the app. And it's one of the better transparency modes out there, so voices are very clear, if not slightly amplified. but you can hear your surroundings very well. Obviously great when running. There's a minimal amount of white noise hiss as well. So it's pretty close to what you would hear naturally without any earbuds in your ears. And the overall quality of the transparency is very close to the Momentum 4. That transparency is slightly more natural, the voices aren't as amplified, and they have slightly less occlusion. So when you speak yourself, your own voice sounds a bit more natural, where on the Momentum Sport, it does sound a little bit muffled. So the transparency mode is very solid. An issue with it though is how easy the microphones pick up wind. Even if it's not too windy of a day, it still comes in the microphones quite loud. So this is gonna take away from whatever you're listening to, especially if you're listening to podcasts or music at lower volumes. Now this is just inevitable with the transparency mode, but it is on the higher side. It is much better than the Momentum 4 though. They pick up wind probably the worst out of all the earbuds that I've tested. So a big advantage of the Sport is that they use those aware ear tips, so barely any wind is gonna come in because they're not actually using a transparency mode. It's more of a natural transparency mode. But both the Momentum 4 and Momentum Sport have an anti-wind mode. So this will completely cut out the microphones from picking up any wind. The only issue is that it turns the transparency mode off and it will actually block out your surroundings slightly, kind of like a low-level noise canceling. And on the Momentum Sport, you can only cycle between anti-wind, transparency, and noise canceling. There's actually no option to turn noise canceling off. You also have to cycle between all three when using the controls. So when you have transparency on, every time you take one or both earbuds out of your ears, it'll automatically change to the anti-wind mode. So next in the cycle is transparency, then it goes noise canceling, and then back to anti-wind. It would have been nice to be able to choose just two of the options if you know that's all you're going to cycle between. So just some things to keep in mind there. Now let's talk about how they work with weight training. And the main thing to consider here is how good the noise canceling is. So you can block out the annoying gym music or whatever loud noise is going on around you. And the overall quality of the noise canceling is pretty much on par with the Momentum 4. And they're up there when it comes to noise canceling strength. So it definitely won't completely cut out loud sounds, but it's going to bring it down to a level that's manageable where you won't have to be cranking your music at max volume. There's also barely any EQ shift. Now EQ shift is when you switch between noise cancelling and transparency. A lot of the time the sound quality will change, but there's no issue here. And comparing to the Sport that doesn't have noise cancelling, that's going to let in low frequency sounds very easily, but it will still block out some mid-range and high frequency sounds, but nowhere near the level of the Momentum Sport and 4. Now, if you do want to use noise cancelling when you're running or cycling, you definitely want to use that anti-wind reduction mode. So that's still going to be like light noise cancelling. Another option here is to just use one earbud while you leave the other in the case. So you have one ear open so you can hear surroundings. And when using one earbud, you can use transparency on it or noise cancelling. And the earbud will also work in mono mode. So when you're using just one earbud, you're going to hear the left and right audio channel out of that one earbud. But do keep in mind, only the left earbud is going to track your heart rate and body temperature. So now let's run through how well that sensor actually works. And this isn't the first earbud to use a heart rate sensor. The first earbud I tested was a Soundcore Liberty 4, and that came out well over a year ago. A downside of that sensor though is that you could only use it in the Soundcore app, where with the Momentum Sport, you can connect it to sport watches, apps, and fitness equipment. So Apple devices, Garmin, Strava, Peloton, Zwift, and more. And Sennheiser have partnered with Polar with this earbud, so you're able to use the Polar Flow app for free. Now I prefer the UI of the Strava app, but the Polar Flow app gets the job done. And I'll be upfront here, I'm definitely no expert when it comes to fitness watches and heart rate trackers, but I took the earbuds on some walks, some runs, and some weight training sessions. So I've just got like an old Apple Watch, and when I compared that in my running test, it looked about the same. They use the same optical sensor, so it's not gonna be as accurate as like a chest strap sensor. And I tracked a pretty long weight training session where I started off with some heavier work and I started doing some high rep stuff and finished with a bit of cardio. And you can kind of see that graph matches where my heart rate would normally be at. Now keep in mind that body temperature tracking is only going to work on Polar devices or in the Polar Flow app. And I can definitely see the utility here if you're going to be training in warmer environments. Now a big advantage of using a heart rate sensor in your ears is that it frees up your wrists. So my go-to training is powerlifting, and I'm often using wrist wraps when squatting and benching. So I can still track my heart rate if I want whilst using those wrist wraps. There can also be issues if you have your optical sensor on your wrist due to increased blood flow into your muscles. That can kind of hinder the reading a little bit. So if it's in your ears, you've got no issues there. Now I have watched and read some reviews online of people talking about spikes in heart rate. So I recommend checking out Des Fit's video, which I'll link up here, because he has some detailed tests when it comes to the actual heart rate tracking of these earbuds. I'm just an audio reviewer, so I'm just focusing more on that side of the earbuds. And as always, I recommend checking out multiple reviews before buying any product, especially when a bud is at this price. But overall, I think the heart rate sensor is more of a secondary feature, but it's definitely nice to have. All right, so that covers most of the training specific features, but there's a lot more to cover now. So let's start with the case and the battery life you're getting. So Sennheiser advertises 6 hours with the buds and 24 hours in total with the case. They don't state if that's with noise cancelling on, with the heart rate sensor on or not, because you can turn that heart rate sensor off in the app by turning on that battery eco mode. So in my real world test, I used the buds for about 3 hours straight. I had the heart rate sensors on. I was tracking a 2-hour workout on the Polar Flow app, and I had my volume going between 50 to 60%. I had noise cancelling on for about 80% of the time, bit of transparency mode, and I was mainly listening to music on Spotify and watching a bit of YouTube. And after that 3 hours, the buds were at about 50% volume. So I'd say the advertised amounts you're getting there are gonna be with everything on. So that's good to see. So if you turn that heart rate sensor off, you can probably expect slightly more battery life. Now the case itself is quite a unique design. It's mainly a silicon finish. The actual hinge is kind of floppy and silicon-like, but should be fine. There's also a cover over the charging port. You got a lanyard loop band included. And the size is okay for a bud that has a wing, much thinner than both the Sport and the Momentum 4. Quite comparable to the Beats Fit Pro case. And here it is compared to the AirPods Pro 2 case, which is the thinnest out of all the buds I've tested. You also get wireless charging. Chuck the buds in the case for 10 minutes, and that'll give you 45 minutes playback on the earbuds. And it looks like the case is also IP54 dust and water resistant. I couldn't find this on the Sennheiser website. I had to find some news article that Sennheiser posted, and it said in that article that the case was IP54 resistant. So I'm pretty sure it is. I couldn't find it on the box or in the manuals or on the Sennheiser website, so don't know what's going on there. But now let's talk about the controls because they're pretty hit and miss. So these don't use regular touch controls. It's more of like a haptic feedback system. So you can actually tap on the bony structure near your ear to use the controls. So great if you're wearing a beanie over your earbuds or gloves. It's also easier to do this when running as you have a larger area to hit rather than just having to tap on your earbud, which you can still do if you like. You just need to tap with more force than regular touch controls. So with this setup, you only get a double tap, triple tap, and long hold. You can customize each function except the long hold, which is going to be locked to volume up and down. So you can add track control, play pause, voice assistant, and some EQ options like bass boost or a podcast mode, which allows you to quickly change the sound without having to go into the app. You can also change the sensitivity in the app. I have it set to high, but even with that setting, it's still pretty unresponsive at times. So I found my right earbud was more sensitive, so that would work most of the time. But if I would adjust my right earbud, the controls would randomly activate sometimes, which is pretty annoying. And my left earbud seems less sensitive, so sometimes I would tap on the earbud or even near my ear and it just won't respond sometimes. And I do have to tap more firmly on the left side. So I'm not sure if my pair is faulty. I have seen some written reviews on websites of people having the same issue. So again, if you own a pair, let me know your experience. You do get wearing detection though, which the Sport doesn't have. So when you take one or both earbuds out of your ear, your music will pause, and when you chuck one or both earbuds back in, your music will resume. So just keep in mind that sensitivity issue because the Sport and the Momentum 4 don't have that issue because they just use regular touch controls, and you also get more functions because they have a single tap. Now let's talk about the connectivity. So you're getting Bluetooth 5.2 here, SBC, AAC, aptX, and aptX adaptive for your codecs. So a slight improvement over just aptX on the Sport. The Momentum 4 do have aptX lossless, so on paper it's slightly better in terms of streaming, but I've tested all the codecs. In my test, LDAC, aptX adaptive, aptX lossless, it all sounds about the same to me. You're only gonna get a slight improvement in sound when using those high-res codecs. Now you do get multi-point connection here, so you can have two devices connected to the earbuds at the same time. You just need to pause playback on one device before you resume it on the other device. And when you get a phone call, that will automatically switch. So same as a Momentum 4, and the Sport doesn't have multi-point. All right, now let's talk about the call quality. So I run through 3 tests here: a quiet room, simulation loud kid noise, because it's kind of like sporadic voices, and a simulation windy city with construction and city noise. First of all, you can't mute your microphones using the controls on any of these earbuds. And you have the option to automatically turn your transparency mode on when you receive a call, and you can adjust some settings of that in the app. So overall, I think the Momentum 4 is the best. The Sport is definitely the loudest, and the Momentum Sport is okay. It's a bit quiet, but it should get the job done. So here are some samples so you can hear the call quality for yourself. All right, here's the call quality of the Sennheiser Sport in a quiet room. All right, here's the call quality of the Sennheiser Momentum Sport in a quiet room. All right, here's the Sennheiser Momentum 4 in a quiet room. All right, now we're going to see how the microphones block out some simulation loud kid noise. All right, here's the Sennheiser Sport with some simulation loud kid noise. All right, here's the Sennheiser Momentum Sport with some simulation loud kid noise. All right, here's the Sennheiser Momentum 4 with some simulation loud kid noise. Alright, now I've got some city noise, construction noise, and some simulation wind.
Alright, here's the Sennheiser Sport with some city noise, construction noise, and some simulation wind. Alright, here's the Momentum Sport with some city noise, construction noise, and some simulation wind. Alright, here's the Sennheiser Momentum 4 with some city noise, construction noise, and some simulation wind.
All right, now let's run through the app customization. So these use the same smart control app you can get on iOS or Android. What's new here is that sports sensor tab, which will just show you some information about how the heart rate sensor works and the body temperature tracking. And in there, you can change it from Celsius to Fahrenheit. Your heart rate and body temperature will also be tracked in the app in real time. You get a decent 5-band equalizer to customize the sound, same as the Momentum 4, and that's up from only 3 bands on the Sport. You get sound check, which is like a quick hearing test to make an EQ based off how you like to hear. Sadly, you don't get the same sound personalization that the Momentum 4 have, which at this price, I feel like it should have been there, but anyway. Sound Zones allows you to set EQ and noise control settings based off certain locations that you visit. You've got your control customization and ear tip fit test, and that settings tab will have your extras like what codec you're using, that battery eco toggle which will turn off the heart rate sensor, as well as disable the high-res codecs. You can choose to automatically accept calls when you take the earbuds out of your case, auto power off customization, so you can automatically turn your earbuds when there's no device connected to them. You've got your tone and voice prompt options, and you have the same battery protection mode the Momentum 4 have. So this will only charge your earbuds to about 80%, same with the case. So this should prolong the life of your earbuds. I recommend you might as well have this on if you don't really need that full charge every time you use the earbuds. And you don't get that on the Sport. All right, now let's talk about what's most important, sound quality, and starting with volume here. So in my max volume test, I got just over 111 decibels on the Momentum Sport. So the Momentum 4 at about 117 is definitely louder at max volume. Still, as long as you're above 100 decibels, that's going to be fine for most devices, even if you have a bit of hearing loss. Really, anything over 85 decibels, you're in kind of hearing loss territory. Now, when it comes to low level listening, since we naturally hear less bass and treble at those lower volumes, all 3 pairs don't have a special EQ to boost these levels. So they all sound fine at those lower volumes. It really depends on how you EQ the buds. So if you have more bass and treble, they're just gonna sound better at lower volumes. But now onto the sound itself, and this is the first time in I think any true wireless earbud Sennheiser has made that they moved from their 7mm driver to a 10mm driver. Does a larger driver mean they sound better? That's not how it works. It's how the actual driver is tuned. But they do sound great though. Usually the treble is more of a standout on Sennheiser true wireless earbuds, but this time around on the Momentum Sport, it's more the mids. So they're quite forward, but at the same time, very natural. So vocals are at the forefront, they sound rich and full, and not too shouty or in your face. The bass hits pretty hard as well. It's a nice blend of mid bass and sub bass that's not over the top, but you get some nice energy with your music. And the treble has nice detail. It's a smoother treble response, so you don't really get that same upper treble sparkle that Sennheiser is known for, but it definitely doesn't sound lacking. You still get the nice detail and it doesn't get harsh. The soundstage is quite open as well, and the instrument separation is very impressive just with the overall well-rounded tuning it has. The 5-band EQ also allows you to customize the sound a little bit. It's not the best EQ. If you do want to push out some crazy subwoofer-like bass though, chuck on that Bass Boost Special EQ preset and play around with that 5-band EQ, and you can push out some seriously impressive bass. Even at high volumes, it still retains very well. And being able to use that bass boost just using the controls, it's going to be very handy if you just need a little bit of extra bass to get you going on a heavy lift or sprint, whatever you do. Now, compared to the Sport, they have quite an interesting tuning. It's more on the V-shaped side. You get boomy bass. The sub bass is slightly lacking. Of course, the mids are a bit recessed. That treble is a standout with excellent detail and a lot more sparkle in that upper treble. The only issue is the bass is a bit muddy and the treble can get a bit harsh. So the Momentum Sport do sound better. Now, compared to the Momentum 4, their stock tuning is slightly more balanced. The mids are dialed back very slightly, but the treble has excellent detail and sparkle. And you can EQ the Momentum Sport as much as you like, but you're not going to be able to get the same crisp treble that the 4 has. And if you want to push out some crazy bass on the Momentum 4, you can do this as well because they have the same Bass Boost Special EQ preset. So you can get them to pretty similar bass head levels, but the Momentum 4 do go about 2 clicks louder. Overall, I think the Momentum 4 is better, especially when it comes to treble, but not a massive difference. So to wrap it up here, this is definitely not an easy recommendation from me. You gotta keep in mind the sensitivity of the touch controls are a bit wacky. The fit is interesting, and you have the wind noise when running and that clicking sound in the left earbud. And the huge price tag is a bit of a turn off, to be honest. Now, it is a massive upgrade over the Sport, but it's about 3 times the price. I still think the Sport might be worth it because those ear tips not letting in wind noise when running, it's a pretty unique feature. They're the only earbud to really do this. So the Momentum 4 is a better all-round earbud, and I personally use the Momentum 3 for a solid year when training. They survive me quite well, and the Momentum 4 are one of my go-to training earbuds because they fit me well, they're comfortable, they stay in well enough, they sound great, and they have great noise cancelling. And I also added the Momentum Sport to my ranking of over 20 earbuds, so you can see how they compare to all the earbuds. I've got notes in there, specs, everything to compare all the earbuds nice and easily. And that's free to download, link below. So hopefully this video and that spreadsheet helps you decide if they're gonna be worth it for you. And if you wanna see how the Momentum Sport compared to 5 of the best sport specific earbuds, you can check out that comparison video right here. Quick shout out to my channel members and all my supporters on Ko-Fi. Really appreciate the support. So thanks for tuning in, stay picky. I'll see you in the next one. Bye now.